we still going to do this? Got about 9:30, time to get started. Today's theme comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. The title of the lesson is The Way of God. And I'll tell you up front, in preparing for this lesson, I already knew going in that God is strange. That's not blasphemy. God is strange. God is peculiar. God is weird. Again, not blasphemy. He is uncommon. He is abnormal. These are all terms to describe anything out of the ordinary. Yeah. He's extraordinary. What's that? Most certainly. Definitely. Oh, yeah. There was about 24 popular topics that I had to select from in order to present the way of God. Let's turn to Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15. Some of you already can kind of predict where I'm going with this. This is the parable of the prodigal son. In Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32, gives the account of the prodigal son. Now, there's a lot of places that show uncommon thinking. That is, thinking that we wouldn't normally, right off the bat, consider to ourselves, well, that's expected, that's normal, that's cool, yeah, see that coming. Let's go beginning in verse, where am I? I said verse 11. Verse 11, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is now found. There we go. Oh, he was lost and he is found. So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitute comes home, you killed the fatted calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. All right. Not too bad a reading. Most of us are familiar with the story. From the aspect of the way of God, overall, does this represent God's way? I think it does. I think it's plain to see that it does represent God's way. Let's consider man's way for just a moment. What could have been expected from the norm? We'll call that mankind's way. What could have been one of the, well, we'll call it a permutation. What's one of the outcomes that could have occurred?